really early, and I guess I got it from him. And plus, there's all this stuff that has to be done to just sort of get the building ready. And we put out all the signage, and I pick up stuff in the parking lot. I touch things. I had to touch things this morning that I think I'm switching to latex gloves for next week. It's just, ooh, so nasty. But part of my assignment in the stand-up phase of every Sunday morning is to put out the signage. It just takes a couple of minutes. And we put out those big accordion board signs, the ones that should say turn or burn, repent now. Those things, they actually just say 3 sentences. And then we carry down those long, in the industry they're called feather signs, those huge upright ones that are about 15 feet high that you stick into the parking barriers downstairs that tell people where we are, because our location's a little tricky to find. Not if you're joining us by internet today, it's easy, it's on Ustream, but in Skin it's a little tougher. And when I carry those feather signs down the stairs, they're really light, so they're easy to carry, but they're kind of big and bulky. I have this same experience every single Sunday morning. You've probably noticed the pond in our lobby. I think we're the only congregation in our network that has its own aquarium. In the entryway, it's this large thing surrounded by stones, and in it are 3 koi. Koi is the original Greek word for really expensive fish. We have named them after the 3 streets that our church has met on. Stewart, Dwight, and Durant are the names of the 3 fish, and they're amazing. I mean, they're big, they're all a different color, they're tubular, you know, they're just, I just really like them. And as I walk down the steps every Sunday morning early, and I've got these big feather signs with me, I hear below me this thrashing in the water every single time it happens. And the first 3 dozen times I was kind of perplexed. And I think what's taking place there is that when the koi in the pond below me see these giant feather-shaped things walking down the steps above them, in their tiny little fish brains, they see that as an enormous bird of prey swooping down, razor-sharp talons exposed, to sink those talons into the meat along the top of their back and drag them up and out in the pond and make them not expensive fish, but bird breakfast. The next week it will happen again and again and again and again. And the thrashing I hear is the fish trying to get deep enough in the water to evade imminent death. Of course, the pond's only a foot deep, so their options are limited. And this morning, as this happens, I'm thinking, this is just exactly what life feels like some days. Huge birds of prey, which we call circumstances, are swooping in with death on their mind. And instead of being a sleek, tubular, very expensive, creative, colorful fish, I am about to become brunch. And I do my level best to evade these things, to avoid them. I thrash, I dive, I turn, I twist. I bump the other fish out of the way to get to the deepest part, but no matter what I do, the pond I live in is really only that deep. Now, in the absence of a bird of prey, it feels like the Pacific Ocean to me, but as soon as the giant feathers appear above my head, I realize that my circumstances over which I feel like Lord and Master the rest of the week are actually a trap. And the other fish aren't my friends at all. They're just more breakfast. You know, that really fits pretty well the kind of classic definition of stress, which is a situation where I have very high demands placed on me, but very little control. Have you lived in that pond ever? I asked Janet the other day, what's a situation that you find stressful? Because we find it effective here when we make fun of each other. And she said, I hate the drive-through at Starbucks. Now, my visceral reaction is that's un-American. That's not even patriotic to say that out loud. And she said she hates the drive-through at Starbucks because as soon as you get in line, you are trapped by the other cars, right? There's an F-150 in front of you and a giant Tahoe behind you with four-wheel drive, and you can go nowhere because now you're stuck like a car in a train, and you have no options forward or back, and you're always behind someone who is just bringing 14 children from soccer practice. And this individual needs drinks that all are many, many syllables, and all covered with things like spray on caramel, and it's going to take a half an hour. And then the person just behind them decides they need to refinance their house, and they'd like to do it through Starbucks, and they go through the whole application process. And 2 hours later, you have your tall coffee. And in the meantime, your blood pressure is, and you really just like to hurt someone in the worst way, but you know there's going to be a restraining order, and then it's a whole big mess after that. And this totally causes stress for my wife because she feels very high demands. Let's get through this thing, let's get going, and you have no control over your situation. Now you would think that if you live a creative life, if you become an influencer in the world, that things would get better. And this month we've been looking at what it's like to live a creative life. We talked about God and my stuff, what it means to manage our material possessions. We've talked about God and my status, being a servant of other people. Last week, Jen talked about God and my significant other and becoming the leader of your significant other's fan club. Today, we're going to talk about God and my stress. Now, to be fair, I have to admit that there are a lot of things that stress me out too. I cannot stand not being on time. If I have a commitment to make and a certain time to be there, I have got to be there 5 minutes early. It just, I can't explain it. It's probably something my parents did to me. I don't know. And if I miss an on time, to me, the professionals are on time. And so if I'm on my way to someplace and I am late, my blood pressure is like 300 over 200. I'm just so, now, oddly, it doesn't bother me much when other people are late. It's not a thing. It's just something about me. I can't bear it. Yard work is my huge bird of prey. When I have to work on things at my house, out in the yard, I become my evil twin. Because it's all going to grow back anyway. And why would you put your life into cutting things that are going to grow back? It's like shoveling snow when you're up in the Rockies. It's just coming again next winter. And the demands of this, and you can't control it because you've got to do it. Otherwise, the grass is going to be up to your waist. It's just enough to make you lose your mind. You'd think if you lived a creative life that would be the solution. You'd have more control, right? And so you'd be able to handle the demands, and the stress would be just kind of less, and it would all be good. A couple of sociologists from the University of Toronto recently studied 1,200 American workers. And what they found a year or two ago was that the more creative your job is, the higher the likelihood that you are going to have enormous job pressures, that you're going to feel overwhelmed, and most significantly, that because, especially of the internet, you're going to take your job home with you, as in just a minute I have to take this, at your anniversary dinner. And that's going to create a conflict between work and home, which will be your enormous bird of prey. Oh yeah, living a creative life is going to fix it all. That's going to be the solution. And our culture is full of people who have solutions to this issue, because in various situations, all of us feel like we're in the pond with the fish downstairs. There are people who I would call the deniers, that basically say that if you're a follower of Jesus, or would like to be, that if you really believe what you say, if you really trust in the Bible, if you read it, if you know it even a little bit, you shouldn't experience stress at all. There should be no fear. It should be completely out of your life. Because if God is who you say God is, then it should be impossible for you to have these feelings. And the only reason that you have stress is because you don't really believe it enough, or because you're in sin, or you could really be out from under it if you wanted to. That your problem is you just don't want it enough because you're weak and shiftless. and spineless and cowardly and no account. And if you had any backbone, have you heard these preachers on television? If you had any backbone at all, you wouldn't be filled with all these negative emotions. And the fact that they're there just shows that you're not good enough to be a Christian. I don't know, I thought that was kind of the point to begin with, you know? that none of us are really good enough, and so maybe we kind of need another way to go. So the deniers they're kind of vehement. They're harsh. You know, that when I hear them, I get this cringe thing. The other group are what I'd call the interventionists. These are the people who claim that it's really okay to feel lousy, but don't worry about it. We have the cure. The cure right now is to switch to a wired microphone to stop the electrocardiogram sound that we get for reasons we still don't quite know. My stress level is falling already. The electrocardiogram sound during Sunday morning talks is my giant bird of prey. It comes swooping down on me and it skyrockets my blood pressure level. The interventionists say it's okay to be afraid, it's okay to be stressed, after all we're just human and so forth. What you need as a result is the cure that I can make available to you for your stress. Now these cures depend on who you talk to. I saw articles on the internet that said that dancing is the way to alleviate your stress. Other people will say things like diet, carrot juice. Meditation, various vitamins, the hula hoop, or you can buy my DVD series, which is filled with essentially sunny platitudes that are going to make you feel better. And if you just saturate your mind in these, you will feel greater control or fewer demands, and your great bird of prey, you will realize is really just a giant feather sign being carried downstairs by a person who has to set up for a church service. One of these interventionists would be Lindsay Lohan, who at the age of 20 said this: "I'm 20 years old. I like to party as much as anyone my age. Going clubbing is my way of relaxing and releasing a lot of stress. I don't feel that I should have to justify that part of my life. I don't know that I'm necessarily an addict." You know, I think she's got it right on the money. I think that's exactly what the club scene is. It's a giant exercise in self-medication. The music, the lights, the chemicals, the hormones, the whole package. It's a way of making it all go away, so that even though the great bird of prey is still there, I never have to see it again because my mind is throbbing with Didn't think I knew that, did you? Well, I don't think either the deniers or the interventionists really offer us much of a path forward. So maybe what we could do if the creative life is really going to, in some ways, make things worse, is try to put that life in a biblical perspective. And when I thought about this week, I thought there's a lot of reasons to love the Bible. One of the reasons to love it is that there's so much stuff I wouldn't put in there if I were just making it up, because it's really bad for business. And one of the things that's in there is the Bible is a book of really scared people. When you think about it, everybody's on the run from something, about to be killed in the middle of a war, up against some terrible crisis. People talk about the book as if it's a catalog of heroes, and in another sense, it certainly is. But in the sense of today's talk, it's the way you get to be a hero is by being scared to death for a long time. And so in a sense, it's kind of a book of people that are really pretty spooked, and since most of stress really comes down to fear, it comes down to anxiety about something, those two things I think we could really talk about as almost synonyms today. And so we're going to take our frame of reference from Psalm 57. I've gone old school today, and we've actually printed this out for you on a flat rectangular two-dimensional medium known as paper. And so you have this as our gift to you, recycled paper. And you can take that home with you, and I hope you'll read through this at least once a day this week. It'll do your heart good to put this inside you and to feel it. Now, the context of this, of course, is the life of a shepherd who lived 3,000 years ago in the Middle East, in a region that was known as Judah at that time. His name was David. He was the son of a sheep rancher named Jesse. He was out in the middle of nowhere, and a prophet named Samuel found him and anointed him to be the second king of this region. The reason being that the first king was a total loser. His name was Saul, and the only thing he had going for him was that he was tall and he was handsome. In other words, he was like a celebrity with no brains. He just had absolutely nothing to offer. And so David goes from nowhere to celebrity by way of this titanic struggle he won against the giant Goliath. And from that platform, he joins Saul's staff as kind of the resident music therapist. Saul had moods, really bad moods. Really, he would just kind of go, he would just be beside himself sometimes to the point of violence. And David's playing would sort of calm him down. But as Saul began to learn about the celebrity of David among the people, his envy and jealousy grew. You know, when you're a loser, it's hard to be around a winner. And so his solution to that was a spear, as in stick it through it. As in Saul is now David's giant bird of prey, and the palace is the pool he's swimming in. And Saul tries over and over to kill the young man, and David thrashes and searches and tries to find a way to escape and stay in the pond. Ultimately, he can't. He has to jump out. He flees, and he's pursued by Saul and his forces. He goes anywhere he can disappear into a crowd. He even ends up living among the mortal enemies of the Philistines for a while. He feigns insanity among them. He ends up living with a bunch of priests. And finally, as recorded in 1 Samuel 22, he arrives at a cave at a place called Adullam, and he's hiding out there. And about 400 people join him there, all of whom are malcontents. You kind of get the impression there are people who couldn't pay their taxes. They're on the run from the law. They're marginal. It's not the first team. Are you with me? And so what he's done is on the run from Saul the loser, he collects 400 losers to be the other fish with him as the bird of prey circles overhead. And in this cave, in Adullam, he writes a song. It sounds like part of a bad Broadway musical, doesn't it? I hate musicals. I know saying that, it's like that sushi thing I have. That's so completely wrong. I cannot stand musical theater. Isn't that awful? I am such a Philistine. I'm a savage. I'm a brute. I'm a primitive. I know it. I'm a Neanderthal. But the whole idea of being caught in a series of circumstances and then suddenly you feel a song coming on? Really? A song? I just don't, I don't get it. And that's why what happens here in Psalm 57, which is a song written out of the cave experience, is as wildly improbable as any song in any piece of musical theater ever done. Apologies to all my friends who are in the acting professions. And so this is how it opens, and you can follow along on the sheet that we've given you. Here's the introduction, which are the musical instructions to the choir master according to Do Not Destroy. Now there's a catchy tune. Oh God, do not destroy me. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And that instruction is essentially what it's to be set to. And then the psalm itself is described as a miktam, which is some genre description. We don't really know what. It's been lost in history, but it's probably something along the lines of, if I were doing a hip-hop song today, I would go to someone who was a beatmeister, you know, to do a hip-hop beat for me, and then we would create the lyrics and set it to that beat. You know, my name is David, gonna be king, so don't let me, don't mean a thing. You know, and you would do it like that. And so here's the song that breaks out in the cave. Now imagine yourself. This is written for the cave. It gets to the choir eventually, but it's written for the cave. Now you're with the 400 out there, or you're walking by, and from the cave, according to whatever that beat is, you hear these words coming out, perhaps accompanied by the harp. Be merciful to me, O God. Be merciful to me, for in my In you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge. You see the difference that could make when the shadow you see overhead seems to be a giant bird of prey? And when faith rises up in you during that time of stress, what you realize is that God, and the allusion is to a sort of mother bird drawing chicks together under her wings, and the tenderness that that is versus the incipient violence that's implied by the threat that is soaring over us, keeping in mind that Saul and his armies are pursuing this man as he writes these words inspired by the Holy Spirit. And he describes them as the storms of destruction, till the storms of destruction pass by. I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. That can also mean God who avenges me. When the wings of destruction are overhead, this is the God who shoots them down, who takes care of me. Verse 3 says, he, meaning God, will send from heaven and save me. He will put to shame him who tramples on me. Selah. That word implies something like a pause. It could be a musical term. It may also mean, in a poetic sense, a kind of a place to press pause and think about what we've just said. Now here you are in the darkness of the cave. Saul's people are going to take your life on sight, and the psalmist David is saying, now let's just stop for a minute and think about the fact that no matter who's coming against me, God still has the power and the willingness to make sure that that giant bird of prey is turned back. But when you're scared to death, so much is what you think about, isn't it? So much is what you dwell on. And I don't know about you, but when I'm feeling scared, my mind tends to dwell on the thing that frightens me. And David's offering us a little pause, says, wait, let's dwell on something else for a minute. Let's dwell on what God is like and what God is prepared to do. God will send out his steadfast love and his faithfulness. My soul is in the midst of lions. Lions were common in the region at the time, not today. In Berkeley, we would have written mountain lions. These animals prowled around, carnivorous, another kind of predator, looking to devour us, looking to come after us. I lie down amid fiery beasts, the children of man, whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. That's the end of the first verse, and here's the refrain. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. How do you get from birds of prey and lions with teeth as sharp as arrows to be exalted, O God? Verse 2. They set a net for my steps. My soul was bowed down. In other words, my enemies are trying to trick me and trap me. They dug a pit in my way, but they have fallen into it themselves. Selah. Let's just stop to think about that for a second. This is like the corrupt real estate investor who ends up owning a piece of real estate in the state penitentiary for a while. Someone who has fallen into the very trap that they themselves prepared for someone else. Oh, that's a good thing to think about when you're afraid. So much is what you think about. My heart is steadfast, O God, says verse 7. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make melody. Awake, my glory. That's an expression that today we would say that everything in me should wake up. Awake, O harp and lyre. Let even my musical instruments sing the praises of the God who is my deliverer, is what David is writing. I will awake the dawn. In other words, the coming to life of everything in me is going to be so powerful and so profound that I will wake up the day itself because of my expression of praise and honor to God. Well, that's a different way of singing something to the Lord, isn't it? And the effects that that would have. Verse 9 says, I will give thanks to you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing praises to you among the nations. For your steadfast love is great to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. That's the end of the second verse. Here's the refrain again. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. Fear is a cave. Faith is a song. Fear is a dark, closed-in, clammy, dank echo chamber. And faith sings the praises of God. It seems to me from this passage that the deniers don't have it right, because David has just straight out said, I'm scared to death here. He's telling the truth. These people are out to kill him. Their teeth are sharp like arrows. And there's nothing to be gained by pretending that we're superheroes. We're not. Our frame, the Bible says, is made of dust. We're fallible and fragile and frail, and we're just going to have the feeling of the bird of prey from time to time, because not because we're bad people, but because we're people. And it seems like the interventionists don't really have it right either, because there's no magic bullet suggested here. This is not an inoculation. You don't take 2 verses and call me in the morning. This is not a simple bulleted list formulaic kind of an answer to faith, because it's a relationship. What God is speaking, I think, through the psalm and speaks to me when I feel afraid is that this is my opportunity to come and worship. I can't make myself not being afraid or make myself not stressed by simply deciding mentally not to think about it. I have to do something with it. And that is, I have to turn it to God. God, this thing that I'm afraid of, this thing that's stressing me out, what it's going to do ultimately is it's going to show how great you are. It's going to show how wonderful you are. It's going to show how you can deliver us and how you care for me. It's going to show that even though this cave is big and deep and dark, and I don't have, all I've got is 400 losers. I have an army that couldn't fight its way out of a wet paper bag. I have no hope. I'm being pursued by thousands. Their teeth are so sharp, they're like the tips of arrows. But none of that is as big or as strong or as wonderful as you and your love. And I'm going to praise you for that. Be exalted, O God. Oh, Saul's going to try to kill me, and all his armies are going to try to cut me down. But I'm going to be okay, I guess, because God is big. See, it doesn't have to be a good song. What fear is your opportunity to become a songwriter. Mm-hmm. Fear is a cave. Mm-hmm. Faith is a song. Mm-hmm. You guys get to stand with me, if you would, for a few moments. Ask our band to come back. And we're going to have a few moments of worship now. We're going to lift up the Lord's name, tell God how great we think He is. And I just feel like this would be a great time for us, all of us, to just bring the stresses and strains in our lives and the big birds of prey that might be over us in some way. And, you know, to step out from behind denial and to just say, let's hold off on the carrot juice and the dancing for just a minute. And to just, in this time of worship, as we say these words, really own them in our heart and make them our words. And really thank and praise and honor God today and acknowledge His greatness, His goodness, and how big He is. As we worship this morning, if you'd like to have someone pray with you about anything in specific, we'll have some of our leaders on both sides of the auditorium here, and just find one of us and we'll be glad to do that as well. But let's just tell God how good He is. He already knows our situation. The Lord knows we already know it. Let's tell the Lord how good He is this morning.